everyone, my name's Lily. I'm the book reviewer behind Utopia State of Mind, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite reads from each month of the year since half of the year is over. This is just my little pile. To be fair, I was doing a really good job at tracking down all of these favorites until about recently, where I've kind of fallen off. It's mostly because I'm waiting for certain books to arrive. This is my list or my stack so far. You'll notice that that's already 5 books and only 6 months of the year have passed by. But it's that even though I'm supposed to pick one book from every month, there are a few where I didn't. I know I'm starting off the video where I basically say that there's a rule and then break it. But this is my video. So I'm going to start off with January. And in January, we have 2 books, just immediately starting off the back with Fathom Folk and Most Ardently. So basically, I love Fathom Folk for 3 main reasons. The first one was that I have a niche interest in mermaids and sirens. Give me all of the recommendations down below because this is one of my favorite kind of, as I said, niche interests. And secondly, I really loved the women in this book and how they kind of navigate their own identity and their ambitions, their love, their kind of societal place, and the way that society looks at them and the expectations they have for them. And third, I've been recently driven to books about rebellion and deep societal need for rebellion and revolution. Don't know why. And so I think Fathom Folk really talks about kind of how can we make this rebellion or this kind of deep-seated change happen? Is it kind of like incrementally? Do we get involved, slowly? Is it kind of like, do we do an uprising? Do we burn the whole system down? Like, what do we do? And I think Fathom Folk talks about that in such beautiful ways. I cannot wait for the sequel, and that is why I had to start off the year with Fathom Folk. The next one is Most Ardently. This is a Pride and Prejudice retelling. It is part of the YA Fierce Reads Classics Remixed series. It is just all of these classics remixed feature marginalized characters, and so this features a trans main character in the Pride and Prejudice retelling. This probably is my favorite Pride and Prejudice retelling, which is a bold statement considering how many Pride and Prejudice retellings there are and that I've read, but Most Ardently definitely has to take the cake. I loved the way that it talks about not only love and talks about the themes of Pride and Prejudice, but it's a reimagining or a retelling that talks about the ways that in this historical fiction setting, certain groups, certain privileged people are able to express their gender and their sexuality more than others. It talks a lot about the intersectional identities in that sense. And I just really loved kind of the lead up for both of these characters to talk not only about their love, but their safety, security, and the options that are presented to them. The next one for February is Conditions of a Heart. Here we go. I really loved this book. Bethany Mangle has been an author that I've been following since Bethany's debut, so I've been really excited for Conditions of the Heart before I even read it. What I really love is not only the chronic illness representation, but I really enjoyed seeing these 2 characters come together and fall apart. It kind of starts off with a breakup, or it kind of starts off with emotional turmoil, and it talks not only about love but also the ways that we in our lives, specifically with the chronic illness representation, are looking to be understood, and the ways that this kind of manifests in a variety of different ways for this main character. It's kind of universal in the way that we want to be seen and accepted for who we are. We don't want to hide who we are. We want to be understood without having to explain ourselves. But the chronic illness adds another element to it, where we realize that for some people, they have to think about the ways that they're limited by their body, they're limited by a time frame, factors they cannot control in that sense, in a way that not everybody experiences. So that's why I really loved Conditions of a Heart for February. For March, we have a sequel, and it is Blood Justice. Blood Debts was like a 5-star read for me. I really loved not only this mix of contemporary, but also fantastical, magical setting. Blood Debts talks a lot about, kind of like the title, debt. It talks a lot about what we will do when we are in debt, when we feel people are indebted to us, when they owe us something. But Blood Justice talked a lot about what happens when we feel like justice has been denied to us. What do we do to pursue justice? You know, those titles are just fantastically describing what's going on. I really loved the way that the sequel is able to kind of expand not only on the world, but also on the characters. We see a lot more of the people in the periphery come to focus or come into the light. We also see the characters who are really reeling from the events of the first book and trying to figure out what their new roles are in the society, what their new leadership, what their new powers are. So definitely really enjoyed Blood Justice. The next month is April. And in April, I loved not only Dear Wendy, but also The God and the Gumiho. So let me just start off with The God and the Gumiho. This was just such a fun, swoony fantasy story. If you really love contemporary fantasies and you want to be like pulled into a grumpy sunshine romantic kind of plot line as well, The God and the Gumiho is definitely one that you should be reading. It was just like so funny and so funny and swoony, I guess. So in The God and the Gumiho, it's basically has this grumpy versus sunshine, these grumpy meet sunshine, but also double identities and like betrayal in that sense, and kind of wondering if we can fall in love with someone without knowing who we are, and if someone isn't telling us, do we kind of still know? It has kind of those aspects in it. There's also a ton of action, there's some fight scenes, there's tons of secrets, there's fantasy, and it all has this kind of contemporary fantasy setting. Fallen gods, prophecies, destinies, love, choice, all of that in The God and the Gumiho. And the next one is Dear Wendy, which is so different from that. This is a contemporary book. It's set in college, but in the beginnings of college, and it's basically two characters who are both on the ace and arrow spectrum, and they create this kind of dueling romance advice column, is the sort of core of Dear Wendy, and we're able to kind of see these two personas, not only the personas of the real life people, but the personas of them online, to kind of see the different ways that we give advice and want to receive advice, but also the different ways that these characters are taking the romantic advice or the romance series seriously. We talk a little bit about the aphobia within the world and the kind of normalized, kind of expected allosexuality, not only in the aromantic spectrum, but in the asexual spectrum as well. This book was just like the biggest hug. I loved not only the idea of the kind of chicken soup for the soul kind of advice column, but also this wondering about friendship and about friendship relationships, and wondering kind of the place they have in our lives, specifically, as I said, because of the allosexuality and the allo-romanticism in terms of the way that society kind of says that friendship isn't as important as all of these other things that are supposed to be way more important. So really enjoyed Dear Wendy. The next book, or the next month, for May was two favorites, Road to Ruin and Don't Fear the Reaper. Technically, these are both adult, so my rule in my mind was one adult, one YA, but these are both adult. To be fair, they're different genres. One is a sci-fi speculative fantasy and one is a horror, and that's why I've made the exception, because I'm not a horror girly, but Don't Fear the Reaper was something else. So I wanted to mention that one because it takes a lot for a book that you don't normally read that genre to like become a favorite, even though you don't normally read that genre. I'm like the biggest scaredy cat. And so when I really loved Don't Fear the Reaper, I was surprised, because if you see my May wrap up, you'll find out a little bit more about the context. But basically, I liked My Heart is a Chainsaw, but Don't Fear the Reaper was kind of the thing that cinched it for me. It is a sequel to My Heart is a Chainsaw, so I can't talk too much about it. But basically, it's a horror book, which I didn't think I was going to like, but I think that so much of the work of My Heart is a Chainsaw lays the foundation for Don't Fear the Reaper to be so fabulous. I also listened to this on audiobook, which not only shows how much I love audiobooks, but the importance of audiobooks, because listening to Don't Fear the Reaper in audiobook was so much more of a better experience than My Heart is a Chainsaw because of the audiobook narration. It just cleared up a lot of things in my head for me, so wanted to mention that one. The other one is Road to Ruin, which is a speculative fiction adult book. We love a romantic love triangle. We also love a romantic love triangle that kind of is like leaning towards more of a poly side, leaning more towards a kind of like everybody should love everybody. If you love everybody, you should just be together kind of thing. Queer representation, obviously, in Road to Ruin. But I loved that it not only feels a little bit Mad Max in the sense that there's kind of these like dirt bikes, there's a courier service, there's a desert settings, kind of long, long spanses of distance. To me, that's like Mad Max. But also, there's this world of speculative fiction and fantasy in the way that kind of the world functions. I can't tell too much about it because I feel like that's running a little bit into spoiler territory, but I think Road to Ruin has this great balance between all of those elements and the action and also the character dynamics. Not only the character dynamics of the three of them, the love triangle, but the character dynamics of the main characters as well, kind of trying to figure out who we want to be and what mark we'll leave on the world, not only as well with kind of like what makes life worth living. Is life about surviving? Is life about legacy? Or is life about living? That's kind of the thing that I loved about Road to Ruin. And this last month is June. 2 favorites as well, but 1 adult, 1 YA. So that I'm still sticking to that rule. The adult pick is Long Live Evil. I really love a book that talks about a villainess. I just like a good villainess will get me every single time. I just love it. And I think what I loved so much as well about Long Live Evil, it felt very meta in the way that the main character knows about tropes. The main character knows about like what would the character do in this situation, because basically the main character comes from Earth and gets dropped into her favorite fictional world in which she is a character, and she is actually a very prominent character in that fictional world. So it has this like meta quality in which she knows things about the world, and she knows things about characters, she knows things about plot, about archetypes, about tropes, but all of those different things, but while she's also living in it. And so it talks not only about being a villain, being vilified, but also the ways that not only people will treat villains, but also treat female villains or treat women who are villains versus who will treat a dude villain. And I think we can see that as well in redemption arcs. I think there's a huge difference of redemption arcs for gender, redemption arcs for marginalized characters, all of those different things. And Long Live Evil felt not only kind of stimulating to my brain, but also just really fun and entertaining. I kind of fell into it. And the second one for June is 12th Night, which is a 12th Night retelling. I really liked My Mechanical Romance. These titles are just serving me everything I want. And 12th Night has nostalgically been one of my favorites. I'll link down below my June, well, I'll link every month's favorites so you can kind of hear a little bit more about them. But basically, 12th Night was nostalgic for me. I also really enjoyed the talking about the sexism in the gamer space. And thirdly, the main character in 12th Night was kind of who I wanted to be / was as a teenager. So all in all, it was like the perfect package. And those are each of my favorite books from every month so far in 2024. I'm excited to see how the rest of 2024 will be. And I'd love to know from you all what some of your favorites were by the month for 2024 and what you think might be a favorite for you for the rest of 2024. I've never done one of those predict a 5-star read. Maybe if you're interested in that, let me know below. I've never done one of those, but I already know some of the ones that I'm really excited about that might be 5-star reads. And now that I'm saying it more and more, I'm kind of like, should I do that as a video idea? I don't know. Anyway, the ramblings of my outro. I hope you have a really great rest of your reading day, week, month, and year. And I will see you in the next video and or next favorites or whatever video you see of me next. Bye!